Hi, my name's Nick, and welcome to the Painter's Mess. In today's video, I'm going to be painting up some Kill Team Hivestorm Terrain as fast as I can, and I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to paint terrain. And these aren't quite the little nitty-gritty about painting, it's more of 5 tips to get through painting your terrain. So with that, let's go make a mess. Tip number 1 is to make everything as easy as possible. Now, I started with a black prime and a white zenithal highlight, and I left some darker spots towards the bottom of the terrain. Now, I did this because the buildings themselves I'm going to leave as white. But if you're painting any kind of terrain that may be metallic in nature, you might want to start with a metallic prime or a metallic base coat. Either way, starting with the easiest possible entrance into painting your terrain is the best way forward. And you can always go back and add grime or dirt or pigment powder later, but while you start going through the process, it's just easier to start with whatever you're going to leave the color of the main bulk of your terrain. So if you wanted your terrain to be green, I would start with a green prime. And if you want it to be blue, start with a blue prime. And then you can kind of base your terrain off of that. Tip number 2. This is terrain, not an award-winning Golden Demon piece or terrain for a miniature competition. Unless, of course, that's what you're going for. And in which case, don't listen to any of these tips. But if you're just trying to get this terrain on the tabletop as fast as possible, just realize that you don't have to paint all of the minor details that are incorporated into the sculpts of these terrains. All you have to do is get some paint on them as fast as possible. And in which case, you can be sloppy. You can throw paint around and it doesn't have to be accurate. I think that's probably one of the biggest problems with many of us, is that we want to paint the nitty-gritty, we want to paint the small details. But trust me when I say this, it's terrain, and it's just going to sit at a table from 3 to 6 feet away, and most people aren't going to inspect it as they would a miniature. I would be more focused on painting your miniature and putting your time toward your minis or your army compared to your terrain. And I think most people would be looking more at your terrain or at your miniatures than your terrain anyway. So really, you don't have to be highly detailed oriented for painting terrain. Contrast paint is a wonderful thing to add to or wonderful tool to have in your toolbox when painting terrain, and you're going to see that as I progress through this video. And sometimes the contrast paint doesn't work and you just have to throw on regular paint, and that's okay too. And that leads me to tip number 3. Take the shortest path to finishing your terrain in whatever way possible. And what I mean by that is use every available resource you have. If you have an airbrush, go for it. And if you don't really know how to use an airbrush, terrain is the best time to get practice in. You can really hone down the practice of getting those fine details if you want to use your airbrush. And if you haven't used one before, pick up a cheap one for sure, and use it on that and see what you can do with it. You can mix paint within the brush and just throw paint everywhere. Your terrain does not have to be perfect, nor does it have to match the box art. Now, if you want to make it look somewhat similar, I'd recommend, going that route and using reference materials like I used in this video. But for the most part, just throw paint on it, because I think everybody's just going to be happy to play on a painted terrain, on a table with painted terrain, than if it was just gray plastic. So if it looks completely absurd, that's fine too. As long as it has paint on it, just kind of like your miniatures do, you're gonna have a good time, and you're gonna have that little bit more of an immersion into the game as before. Like I said, use the shortest way possible. Utilize all your easy painting techniques like dry brushing or contrast paint, like I mentioned. And sometimes you just gotta throw on a big slab of paint, and that's okay too. Water it down and just thin it out so it's not too bulky and it doesn't ruin any of the fine details. And it's gonna look good once it dries, and especially if you throw a dry brush over it, it's gonna look great. If you really want to get fancy at the end, throw on an oil wash or throw on just a regular wash, or once you're done, use your airbrush and throw a wash into your airbrush and just spray it to give it some grimy effect, but it's not completely necessary. Realistically, you just need to have the paint on the terrain. You don't have to have all those details, you know, all the edges highlighted. You don't have to have everything, all the crevices washed and have a wash and everything. Realistically, just throw paint on it and it's gonna look good. If you want to go farther later on, once you know, play a couple rounds with it or something, then go for it, and that's obviously your preference. But don't spend too much time on your terrain when you could be putting that focus towards painting up beautiful your beautiful army or your beautiful miniatures instead. Tip number 4. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If you are going to pick out the small details on your terrain, go slowly, because as you go through the process of painting your miniatures, you don't want to have to go back and correct and keep repeatedly correcting all of the small things that you're going to get hung up on. So take your time, and if you don't mind, then slap paint on. But other than that, you know, slow, like I said, slow is smooth. And as you go through, you progress slowly and you do it smoothly. And then that, in the end, is fast, where you're no longer going back to correct all the mistakes that you feel that you made. But again, it's terrain. It's not that big a deal. And my last tip: have fun painting the tabletop terrain that you have. And if it doesn't bring you joy or fun, just build it and leave it gray. Or do what I did at the beginning and just prime it and then do a zenithal highlight and maybe a small dry brush. Like I said, you don't have to pick out the small details. And if you're more than willing to play on gray plastic, play on gray plastic. Who's gonna stop you? Who's gonna say, I don't wanna play on gray plastic? Especially if it's, I don't wanna play on gray plastic terrain. That's kind of silly. So if you don't have the time, or if you want to put your time elsewhere, just leave it gray. I would rather play a game and enjoy the social aspect of playing with my friends on gray plastic and lose that little bit of immersion, as long as I had better painted miniatures or models, compared to worrying about the color of terrain or if the terrain matches the board that it's on. So realistically, if you want to play on gray plastic, go play on gray plastic. So I hope you found this video enlightening, or at least helpful in some way. And maybe it's just another video of another perspective on how to paint terrain. And I know that I'm not going through the process of what I'm doing on this terrain, which is perfectly fine. If you want that, let me know in the comments down below and I can give you exactly what I did to paint this terrain very quickly. And I say quickly, and I mean that very loosely, because over a week, it probably took me 5 to 7 hours to do the whole thing in total, from the priming at the beginning to the dry brush small details at the end. And that's over a couple days, obviously working on it at an hour at a time or something like that in the evenings once my daughter's asleep. It's whenever I could find time, just enough to get the things painted. And as you can see, I didn't really focus too much on the small details. I did throw paint on them and then I just dry brushed everything. So, and I never went back and did more of the small detail work. And I don't think I plan on it, because I think it looks great how it is right now. So if that is something, or if you want to know about what I did in this painting video, let me know in the comments down below. I would love to share exactly what paints I use and the process. And I have a lot of footage that wasn't sped up on exactly how I ended up doing all this painting for all of the little pieces of terrain. If you have any other painting tips for others, and it doesn't have to be specific about the paint process, but things to help you get through painting terrain, throw them down below, because I would love to share those tips with the community, and I'm sure everybody else who watches this video would like it too. And if you want to support this channel monetarily, I don't have anything other than a couple affiliate links down below, and I'm still working on learning how all that works, so bear with me. I might be able to post a Ko-Fi link down below as well if you want to support. And basically all of the likes, the subscribes, the comments, the funds, if you want to support that way, goes directly towards this channel and working on getting better equipment. And it gives the justification for me to keep making this kind of content and videos for you guys. So if you find anything that you enjoy, please let me know down below. Shoot me a message, shoot me an email. I want to make more content, and I especially want to move more back into the Horus Heresy stuff. I am fond of Kill Team. That is my 40K outlet, and especially now that they've announced a Plague Marine Kill Team again, because that's what I was very upset about with this new edition. But I do want to go back to the Horus Heresy stuff. So if you find enjoyment in Kill Team or Horus Heresy, that is probably where most of my focus will be on in the future. And if you're looking for 40K stuff, again, let me know and I'll be glad to make more content and paint some stuff up that way. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you guys watching these videos and any support that you give me. So with that, I will see you in the next video, and in the meantime, go make a mess.